Section 1. You will hear a customer phoning a builder to discuss some work she would like him to do on her home. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Thorndike's?
Good morning. Is that Mr. Thorndyke?
Speaking. How can I help?
I've got quite a few things which need painting and fixing in the flat, and I wonder whether you'd be able to do the work.
I'm sure I'd be able to help, but let me take down a few details.
Yes, of course.
Well, firstly, how did you hear about us?
It was my friend May Hampton.
The customer heard of the builder from her friend, so friend has been written in the space. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 6.
Thorndike's?
Good morning. Is that Mr. Thorndyke?
Speaking. How can I help?
I've got quite a few things which need painting and fixing in the flat, and I wonder whether you'd be able to do the work.
I'm sure I'd be able to help, but let me take down a few details.
Yes, of course.
Well, firstly, how did you hear about us?
It was my friend May Hampton. You did some excellent work for her a couple of years ago. Do you remember?
Oh, yes. That was in West Park Flats. Lovely lady.
Yes, she is.
And what's your name, please?
It's Edith Pargeter.
Edith. Can you spell your surname, please?
It's Pargeter.
Double T, right. And do you live in West Park Flats as well?
No, actually, it's East Park, flat 4.
Oh, right. That's over the road, I seem to remember. Quite difficult to get to.
Yes, it's at the back of the library.
Right, I know. And what's your phone number?
875-934, but I'm out a great deal in the afternoons and evenings.
So, would the best time to ring you be in the morning?
Yes.
Fine, I've made a note of that. Can I just ask, I'll be in a van, and I know parking's rather difficult around your flat. Where would you recommend?
Well, I always tell people in larger vehicles to park by the post box on the other side of the road from the entrance.
Good, thanks.
And will you be able to give me a full itemised quote?
Oh, yes, I'll list all the jobs separately with individual prices.
That'd be a great help.
No problem.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
Now, what would you like me to do?
Firstly, and most urgently, is in the kitchen. With all the weather damage, the glass in the door has cracked and I'd need that fixing.
I presume you mean replacing?
Oh, yes, and as soon as possible.
What I'll do is come round tomorrow morning and do that immediately.
Oh, thank you so much. The other things aren't so urgent, but...
Now, I'll make a note of everything you want doing.
Well, in the kitchen, I'd like some painting doing.
All the kitchen walls?
Just the area over the cooker. It's very greasy.
Right, it does tend to get that way.
Yes.
Well, if you want a proper job done, what I'd need to do is strip the old paint and plaster it about a week before I paint it.
Of course. Now, May tells me you also do work in the garden.
That's right.
Well, I'd like you to replace a fence.
Just one?
Yes, at the far end.
Fine, shouldn't be a problem.
And that's the lot.
Fine. Yeah, as I say, I can come round tomorrow morning to look over things with you.
Well, that's great, thank you.
So, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow at...
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 2.
Section 2. You will hear Joanne describing her home city of Darwin in Australia to a man called Rob, who hopes to go there. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15 on page 67. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Joanne?
Hi, you must be Rob. Nice to meet you. So, I hear you're planning to visit Australia.
Yeah, and I really wanted to talk to you because I was thinking of spending some time in Darwin, and my sister told me you're from there.
That's right.
So, tell me about it.
Well, where shall I start? Well, Darwin's in what they call the top end because it's right up at the northern end of Australia, and it's quite different from the rest of Australia in terms of cultural influences. In fact, it's nearer to Jakarta in Indonesia than it is to Sydney, so you get a very strong Asian influence there. That means we get lots of tourists. People from other parts of Australia are attracted by this sort of international cosmopolitan image. And as well as that, we've got the same laid-back atmosphere you get all over Australia, probably more so, if anything, because of the climate. But what a lot of the tourists don't realise until they get there is that the city's also got a very young population. The average age is just 29, and this makes the whole place very buzzy. Some people think that there might not be that much going on as far as art and music and dancing and so on are concerned because it's so remote. I mean, we don't really get things like theatre and opera in the same way as cities down in the south like Sydney, for example, because of the transport expenses. But in fact, what happens is that we just do it ourselves. Lots of people play music, classical as well as pop, and there are things like artists groups and writers groups and dance classes. Everyone does something. We don't just sit and watch other people.
You said it's very international?
Yeah, they say there's over 70 different nationalities in Darwin. For instance, there's been a Chinese population there for over 100 years. We've even got a Chinese temple. It was built way back in 1887, but when a very bad storm, a cyclone in fact, hit Darwin in the 1970s, it was almost completely destroyed. The only parts of the temple that survived were part of the altars and the stone lions. But after the storm, they reconstructed it using modern materials. It's still used as a religious centre today, but it's open to tourists too, and it's definitely worth going to see it. Oh, and as far as getting around goes, you'll see places that advertise bicycles for hire, but I wouldn't recommend it. A lot of the year it's just so hot and humid. Some tourists think it'll be fine because there's not much in the way of hills and the traffic's quite light compared with some places, but believe me, you're better off with public transport. It's fine and not expensive. Or you can hire a car, but it's not really worth it.
What's the swimming like?
Well, there are some good beaches, but the trouble is that there's this nasty creature called the box jellyfish, and if it stings you, you're in bad trouble. So you have to be very careful most of the year, especially in the winter months. You can wear a lycra suit to cover your arms and legs, but I wouldn't like to risk it even so, personally. And there are the saltwater crocodiles too. I mean, I don't want to put you off. There are protected swimming areas netted off where you'll be safe from jellyfish and crocs, or there are the public swimming pools. They're fine, of course.
You now have some time to look at questions 16 to 20 on page 68. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
So, which places would you specially recommend?
Well, one of the most popular attractions is called Aquascene. What happens is every day at high tide, hundreds of fish come in from the sea, all different sorts, including some really big deep sea fish. And some of them will even take food from your hand. It's right in the middle of town at the end of the esplanade. It's not free. I think you have to pay about $5, but it's definitely something you have to experience. Then, of course, Darwin has a great range of food, being such a cosmopolitan place. And if you don't have lots to spend, the best place to go is to Smith Street Mall, where they have stalls selling stuff to eat. There's all sorts of different things, including Southeast Asian dishes, which I really like. You'd think there'd be plenty of fresh fish in Darwin, as it's on the coast, but in fact, because of the climate, it mostly gets frozen straight away. But you can get fresh fish in the restaurants on Cullen Bay Marina. It's a nice place to go for a special meal, and they have some good shops in that area too. What else? Well, there's the Botanic Garden. It's over 100 years old and there's lots to see. An orchid farm, rainforest, a collection of palm trees, a wetlands area. You can easily spend an afternoon there. That's at Fanny Bay, a couple of kilometres out to the north. Then, if you've got any energy left in the evening, the place to go is Mitchell Street. That's where it all happens as far as clubs and music and things are concerned. You'll bump into lots of my friends there. Talking of friends, why don't I give you some email addresses? I'm sure they wouldn't mind if you...
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 3 on page 69.
Part 3. You will hear 2 education students discussing an assignment on teaching handwriting to children. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 24.
How are you getting on with the assignment on handwriting?
Not too bad. You know, I hadn't realised that children benefit in so many ways from learning to write. It's such an important skill, and yet most people think handwriting is less important than in the past because people hardly ever write by hand these days.
Yes, and all the evidence suggests children should learn to write by hand before they learn to type, not least because it helps their memory.
That's right. The physical act of writing helps children to remember letters. That seems pretty obvious when you think about it.
What's less obvious is how it helps develop their concentration. They have to sit still and focus on one thing.
Yeah, that aspect of handwriting had never occurred to me before.
Same here. I'm not sure I understand how it improves children's imagination, though.
Well, there was that study which showed that primary-aged children generated more ideas when they were writing by hand than using a keyboard. I would have guessed that would be the case.
Yeah. I'd never associated spatial awareness with handwriting either. I thought spatial awareness was more to do with knowing where you are in relation to objects or other people.
I thought that too. But good spatial awareness is essential for writing because you have to space words correctly. It's not just fine motor skills that improve through writing, as I'd always assumed.
Handwriting is so much harder for children with dyspraxia, who have problems coordinating movement. It's good there are lots of things you can do in the classroom to help them. They need so much more support with letter formation. You need to play lots of games to help them distinguish letter shapes. It takes a lot of patience.
Yeah, I like the idea of using one of those pens that lights up if you press too hard. That seems like a really simple solution.
Yes, absolutely. I'm not sure there's much you can do about children with dyspraxia writing very slowly. It's more important to focus on accuracy, and as they get more confident, I think they eventually speed up.
One quite simple thing you can do is to use grid paper. So they write each letter in a box, and that trains them to space the letters correctly.
Indeed, that's more important for legibility than trying to get them to write in a straight line.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 25 to 30.
For some children, it might be better to teach them to write on a laptop rather than by hand, like children with dyslexia. They often really struggle with handwriting, and some just give up.
Yeah, it's not as frustrating for them if they get things wrong. On a keyboard, they can be more willing to have a go. But I read that developing fluency isn't any faster.
That's right. Did you read that article on the benefits of teaching print rather than cursive handwriting, where the letters are joined up?
Yes. Well, in the past, cursive writing was certainly considered more stylish and educated, but not anymore. Teachers' attitudes have changed because it's been proved that cursive is more difficult to learn, especially for children with learning difficulties who find joining up letters really challenging.
I agree. I was always worried that my poor handwriting affected my exam results, and now research shows that I was right to worry. I'm sure a lot of students think it's unfair that they're being judged on their handwriting, not just their knowledge.
Marks are definitely affected if examiners can't read the script. That's why it's always been so important to teach children to write legibly. Do you think the role of handwriting will change in the future?
I can't see that changing much. Touch typing still isn't taught in most schools, which is a shame. But maybe that won't be necessary in the future, because people will also be able to write by hand on digital devices. Anyway, teachers understand the value of handwriting. It's a basic life skill.
True. However, the fact is that people are writing by hand less and less and relying on digital devices. That does cause some problems.
You mean like note-taking? There are lots of apps for that.
And for reading historical documents, apparently. But my mum is shocked by my awful spelling and the fact that my punctuation is really inconsistent. I think you can put that down to lack of practice.
I expect so. Personally, I miss writing by hand. I hardly ever write anything now. I remember my grandparents had such beautiful handwriting, and it was so individual. Nobody I know would be able to identify my handwriting now. It's a shame.
I know. I feel the same way. I used to write a diary by hand, and now I do that digitally. It just seems less effort to do it that way. So it's not just a problem.
That is the end of part 3. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 3. Part 4. You will hear part of an environmental science lecture about a large bird called the dodo, which is now extinct. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
One of the most famous cases of extinction is that of a bird known as the dodo. In fact, there's even a saying in English, as dead as the dodo, used to refer to something which no longer exists. But for many centuries, the dodo was alive and well, although it could only be found in one place, the island of Mauritius in the Indian Ocean. It was a very large bird, about 1 metre tall, and over the centuries it had lost the ability to fly, but it survived happily under the trees that covered the island. Then, in the year 1507, the first Portuguese ships stopped at the island. The sailors were carrying spices back to Europe and found the island a convenient stopping place where they could stock up with food and water for the rest of the voyage, but they didn't settle on Mauritius. However, in 1638, the Dutch arrived and set up a colony there. These first human inhabitants of the island found the dodo birds a convenient source of meat, although not everyone liked the taste. It's hard to get an accurate description of what the dodo actually looked like. We do have some written records from sailors and a few pictures, but we don't know how reliable these are. The best-known picture is a Dutch painting in which the bird appears to be extremely fat, but this may not be accurate. An Indian painting done at the same time shows a much thinner bird. Although attempts were made to preserve the bodies of some of the birds, no complete specimen survives. In the early 17th century, 4 dried parts of a bird were known to exist. Of these, 3 have disappeared, so only one example of soft tissue from the dodo survives, a dodo head. Bones have also been found, but there's only one complete skeleton in existence. This single dodo skeleton has recently been the subject of scientific research, which suggests that many of the earlier beliefs about dodos may have been incorrect. For example, early accounts of the birds mention how slow and clumsy it was, but scientists now believe the bird's strong knee joints would have made it capable of movement which was not slow, but actually quite fast. In fact, one 17th century sailor wrote that he found the birds hard to catch. It's true that the dodo's small wings wouldn't have allowed it to leave the ground, but the scientists suggest that these were probably employed for balance while going over uneven ground. Another group of scientists carried out analysis of the dodo's skull. They found that the reports of the lack of intelligence of the dodo were not borne out by their research, which suggested the bird's brain was not small, but average in size. In fact, in relation to its body size, it was similar to that of the pigeon, which is known to be a highly intelligent bird. The researchers also found that the structure of the bird's skull suggested that one sense which was particularly well developed was that of smell. So the dodo may also have been particularly good at locating ripe fruit and other food in the island's thick vegetation. So it looks as if the dodo was better able to survive and defend itself than was originally believed. Yet, less than 200 years after Europeans first arrived on the island, they had become extinct. So what was the reason for this? For a long time it was believed that the dodos were hunted to extinction, but scientists now believe the situation was more complicated than this. Another factor may have been the new species brought to the island by the sailors. These included dogs, which would have been a threat to the dodos, and also monkeys, which ate the fruit that was the main part of the dodo's diet. These were brought to the island deliberately. But the ships also brought another type of creature, rats, which came to land from the ships and rapidly overran the island. These upset the ecology of the island, not just the dodos, but other species too. However, they were a particular danger to the dodos because they consumed their eggs. And since each dodo only laid one at a time, this probably had a devastating effect on populations. However, we now think that probably the main cause of the bird's extinction was not the introduction of non-native species, but the introduction of agriculture. This meant that the forest that had once covered all the island and that had provided a perfect home for the dodo was cut down so that crops such as sugar could be grown. So, although the dodo had survived for thousands of years, suddenly it was gone.
That is the end of Part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to Part 4. That is the end of the listening test. In the Ielts test, you would now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet.